as Strauss's Don Quixote. And I thought it would be a good idea just to say a few words about this piece because I think it will help as we're listening to it because you're going to be following a story along. Now Richard Strauss, at the end of the 19th century, when this piece was written in the late 1890s, was unquestionably, without question, the most famous and sort of radical composer alive at the time, known all over the world, not just in Europe. And his music was the byword for modern, sort of a combination of late romantic plus some ultra-modern techniques. And he was a sort of an adherent of what they call the New German School of Music, which believed in program music. That is, music that tells a story. Whether it's Macbeth, or Romeo and Juliet, or Don Quixote, or a hiking trip into the woods, he loves to tell stories in music, programmatic music, and this is really one of his greatest. As a matter of fact, later in life he was asked, after he'd written all of his tone poems, which he called tone poems, so poems in tones, that's what they are, musical tones. Well, what are your favorite works? What do you think are your greatest works? And he always said there's three, but he always started with Don Quixote. Don Quixote, also sprach Zarathustra, and Symphonia Domestica. You rarely hear Symphonia Domestica, and you actually rarely hear this piece. You probably hear Also sprach Zarathustra more. And the reason why you don't hear this piece so much is because it's, number one, terribly, terribly difficult work for any orchestra, and it's a very curious piece. Notice our soloist and principal cellist, Davis Yu, up here, is in a solo position, as if he's playing a cello concerto, which he really is, essentially. Although Strauss wrote the piece saying that the cellist should sit in the section and play from there, but very few people like to do that. So it's a hybrid. It's also a very large, massive symphonic orchestra piece, plus the concerto. And the odd thing is that it's also, you'll hear an awful lot of music in this that is very much just like you're sitting in here listening to a chamber music concert. Very delicate kind of music for little groups of instruments. Now, Strauss decided to use a variation technique. So you see in your program, this is a theme and variation. 10 variations talking about 10 adventures of Don Quixote and his sidekick Sancho Panza, with an introduction and an epilogue. Now, if you write variations, the main thing is you have to have a good theme. So theme and variations. If you have a stinky theme, nobody's going to like the piece. And this is the amazing thing about this piece, because it's only based on a theme that consists of 6 notes, just 6 notes. And here are those 6 notes played by the first trumpet. You will be hearing that over and over throughout this piece. Now, usually it's not heard without any kind of rhythm like that. It's usually with a little hiccup sort of at the beginning. So if we listen to the beginning with the flute and the oboe, or when Davis comes in, he plays it in the minor key, because remember, Don Quixote is the knight of sorrowful countenance. Sometimes we hear it in a very stentorian, powerful voice when he's fighting or when he's angry. So here we have it in the trumpet and trombone. And sometimes it's in a very, very calm, beautiful manner. And we hear the very end when he is dying and when he's come back to his senses. This is the beginning of the finale. It's still those 6 notes. The same things. Now, that's the main theme, but there are little minor other parts to it. So let me quickly bring these to your attention. The theme at the beginning tells us about the knightly character of Don Quixote, and it's played again by the woodwinds. Here we go. The second part of that refers to Don Quixote's courteous nature. He's a very courteous gentleman, and that's played in the strings. And last but not least, there's a little tag which you'll hear very often, which refers to Don Quixote's innocence, his innocent nature. He's just basically a good guy with some mixed up ideas. That's heard by the clarinet. Two last things on this. You know, he's always trying to be out there helping his imagined beloved damsel in distress. Her name is Dulcinea. And her theme is one of the most beautiful themes in the piece. We will hear it many times. It's first introduced by the oboe with some violins and harp. A lovely theme played by our principal over there. Now, his main friend and helper in his adventures is, of course, Sancho Panza. And that character is played by the viola. Here's Don Quixote, and the principal viola, Jocelyn, will be playing the theme of Sancho Panza. But she's also accompanied sometimes by the tenor tuba. Natalie, can you stand up and show the tenor tuba? Or are you for me? And the bass clarinet played by Katie. So these three people sort of alternate together playing Sancho Panza. And this is the sort of the comic relief of the piece. Let's listen to the Sancho Panza theme. The viola. We love the viola. Now, last things. Strauss was very famous for many things, but what he was perhaps the most famous for was his orchestration. And there is a story that he was at a party, a very fancy party, and the woman sitting next to him accidentally made a terrible sound on her plate, which I'm going to reproduce for you. And you can something like this. And it was really awful, and everybody started. And Strauss, very calmly, who was sitting next to her, looked at her and said, "Madam, I am the only living composer who can reproduce that sound in an orchestra." Which is true. He had the uncanny ability to make any sound, whether it's dogs barking, whether it's sheep being attacked, as you'll find in a minute, whether it's a thunderstorm or windstorm, almost drowning in a river. Very, very pictorial. So let me give you a couple of examples, because this piece, when it was first heard, was absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. Let's begin with this. One of the adventures, and this will help because when you look at your program and you see the battle with the sheep, you'll know where you are now. He sees in the distance a field of sheep, although he doesn't think they're sheep, he thinks they're enemies. And so he charges them. And comes out a little worse for wear at the end of it. And this is what that variation sounds like. You have to put your ears back into 1897 for this.